All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Tina Kochaku. I'm a UC Davis PhD student. I would like to thank you for your interest to come to plant-based market section and to welcome you as well. I will be the moderator of the session. This session is part of an experimental set of sessions of AAEA. And so we will have a 15 minutes presentation, then one of the presenters will lead a 3-minute discussion, and then we will have 4 minutes of Q&A. We may start, I think, if there are no questions, and then Peju, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Pejo, a PhD candidate from Penn State, and this paper is a co-work with my advisor, Izao Liu. And the topic I will present today is about the effect of cross-category learning on product innovation and the market expansion of plant-based food. This is still an ongoing project, so your suggestions and comments are very important to us and are very welcome. In response to increasing consumer concern for health and the environment, food companies are driven to innovate the products and provide options that are perceived to be healthier and more sustainable. However, consumers with imperfect information are uncertain about the product quality and may make purchase decisions based on their personal experience. Learning has been considered by previous literature as an important mechanism that links the past experiences to present purchase. And consumers' past experience not only influence the current evaluation for the same category products, but also provide information on quality for other related categories through cross-category learning. Previous literatures either restricted the cross-category learning on umbrella branding or only focused on the category choices and did not consider brand choices. So by relaxing the umbrella branding restriction and also consider brand choices at the same time, this paper tries to answer the following questions. What's the effect of cross-category learning in the expansion of new product expansion? And we use the plant-based food as a case study. We use a detailed consumer level data from Nielsen, which provide us detailed purchases and price information for each household. And we can track each household for their purchase history and allow us to capture the learning process. The preliminary results provide evidence of cross-category learning, and these spillover effects are greater within the same categories, food groups, and then across groups. So this paper will contribute to the Bayesian consumer learning research by filling the 2 research gaps I mentioned earlier, and also provide insights for manufacturers who looks to expand in the plant-based food market, as well as for policymakers aiming to encourage a more healthy and sustainable food consumption. The learning procedure can be modeled by incorporating a Bayesian learning process into a random coefficient discrete choice model. The indirect utility function can be expressed as a function of the quality perception and price and other variables. This is a very standard BLP model, except we add a quality perception here, which is the Bayesian learning process. Consumers with imperfect information make the purchase decisions based on the expected value of the utility. Then we denote the expected value of quality perception as Q bar. Then under the assumption that the error term follows an IID type 1 extreme value distribution, which is a very standard BLP model strategy. The probability that the consumer I choose brand J from category C at time T can be expressed as the following equation. And then we can estimate a multivariate multinomial logic model and conduct a multidimensional integral and using the simulated maximum likelihood method to get the results. So the key point here is how to get the Q bar, which is the mean quality perception, and is assumed to updating in a Bayesian learning manner in this paper. Consumers are assumed to have some initial quality beliefs for each product before receiving any information through use experience. And this use experience and this initial belief is assumed to be normally distributed and are allowed to correlate it across categories, which is the cross-category learning part. So this coefficient here should not be 0. If there's no cross-category learning, this red coefficient should be 0. So in each period, consumers will updating the quality beliefs using the signals about the quality they receive from previous purchase. They can get information about the quality either from the same food categories as well as from other categories through cross-category learning. Then consumers make purchase decisions based on the updated beliefs of the quality of the products and use them as the prior for the next period. So the main quality perception here in time T is an equation of the quality perception in last period plus the learning information from the same category in last period as well as from other categories. We use plant-based foods as a case study, and it is defined as a finished product that provides a direct intentional substitution for animal products. And we choose it as a case study due to 3 reasons. First, there are a growing interest in healthy diet, and concerns about climate change have changed the consumers' preference for protein food. Second, there are an increasing and steady trends of the sales of plant-based food. As we can see here, the sales is 3.9 billion in 2017, and then increased to $7 billion in 2020, and is expected to reach over 162 billion in 2030. And in the other hand, the sales increase in 2022 for plant-based food is higher than overall food increase. Thirdly, there are tremendous innovation in the plant-based food market from both dedicated plant-based food companies such as Beyond Meat and other large food companies, traditional animal-based food companies such as Tyson Foods. The preliminary results from a larger model can be seen in the table 1. So the dependent variable is the dummy variable whether consumers buy plant-based food at time T, and this independent variable is whether they buy it in last period. We can see here it provides evidence for cross-category learning. Take this program as an example. This coefficient is all positive. And significant means that when a consumer buys plant-based burger in last period, they are more likely to buy other categories too. On the other hand, we can see here the coefficient for bacon and sausage are larger than milk, butter, and cheese, which is plant-based dairy. So the spillover effects are greater for the same food group than across food groups. So for the next step, we will finalize the full model results and adding more information sources such as advertisement and the news. and also do some counterfactual analysis, such as by decreasing prices on plant-based food to provide a more affordable plant-based products for consumers. Since, for example, according to Mintel data, the top one barriers for consumers to buy the plant-based foods is the price. So yeah, here is for today. So open to any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I have the honor to discuss your very interesting presentation, I would say. So I was asked to start briefly summarizing the main or most important contribution that you made here. And I think, I mean, we see a lot of papers using these BLP demand models, and you're going to see another one of mine afterwards. But what I find very interesting here, that this is like the first study where I've seen that someone is going beyond the static analysis and really looking into the persistency of consumption, because it can, with plant-based products, I would assume, yeah, very well be the case that people buy once and then say, okay, no, I don't want to try it again. And then we have some bias in the demand estimates. But here you really look at the persistency of buying these products, which I think is very important for the success of these products at the end. So this is my opinion on the main contribution here. Then I would start with 2 or 3 questions for clarification. So what would be very interesting for me, and what I didn't see in the presentation, what's the time dimension here? Because if the time dimension here, for example, is 1 year, then I would wonder how you really can estimate the persistency. For example, if someone buys a burger product, plant-based one, the beginning of 2018 and at the end of 2019, then it's 2 years time period, or do you use monthly or weekly data? So how do you do that?
Yeah, this is really a good question. So for the preliminary results, we just use the year level estimation results. And the next step, and we are now doing the estimation on a monthly level. And we only choose the consumer, since although the plant-based food market is a very promising and increasing emerging market, but the market sales is still a little niche. Yeah. And so the households in my data set who purchase plant-based foods for many times are very limited. So I only choose the households that purchase the plant-based food at least 3 times in my data set to allow us to capture the learning process. And we use the time frame for 1 month.
Okay, then it's okay. And another quick question would be how you estimated the utility function. Did you estimate 1 for the entire data, or did you estimate 1 for each product group, so to say? So how did that work technically?
Technically, it's not, we use the consumer level data, so it's a little different from the retailer data estimation. And we have, technically we have utility for each household, for each choices.
Okay. Good. And then maybe finally some points maybe for next steps. Yeah. So I was wondering, I mean, you have a BLP model here which considers consumer heterogeneity. So what you could definitely also do is to like create different results for different age groups or income groups, or at least see how the results vary by these demographic factors, for example. Yeah. This is one thing that you could do with this model maybe. And another thing is that I don't know if you have that information, but if you have access to Mintel data, then you could use the UPC of products maybe and get some more information on the products, and maybe also consider stuff like labeling or special promotion on the package, and see how that affects the demand at the end.
Yeah, that's a very good point. For the heterogeneity effect across different demographics, yeah, we allow heterogeneity for consumers by allowing the coefficient to be random.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and in the next step, we will also add an interaction term of the main variables with demographics.
Okay. Yeah, because I think this can be very interesting with plant-based food to you really see how it varies across demographic groups, I would say.
And for the second suggestion, we do have UPC level data, but we don't have the information for the labeling and the packaging.
Okay.
All right. That was great. Thank you very much.
All right.
Move on to questions from you and also from the chat if there are.
I think there are some questions in the chat here.
Suggestion. Yeah. Sure.
Discuss the times in addition to look to see if they purchased plant-based. What was the kind of consideration of the scent plant-based? Was that focused most of that fatties? Was that sausages, milk substitutes? You have a pretty wide range of products. What was like what plant-based products were considered?
So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking how I distinguish this category? Or?
Yes, if I understood the model, we used if they purchased plant-based, you look at the other later purchases. So if I understood correctly, you the consideration they purchased plant-based,
yeah,
then they moved the rest of their purchases. So what type of plant-based products did you particularly use for that?
So the big group is plant-based meat and plant-based dairy, and plant-based meat includes sausage, or meat and other and frozen milk, and the plant-based dairy, cheese, and other plant-based. Thank you so much.
So I have two quick questions. First of all, you had a time trend for your utility function, which isn't there. We think of trends and prices and demand, but what does it mean for my utility function to have a time trend? I just haven't seen that. So that seemed odd. And then I think secondly, more general in terms of that table you prepared. So you're looking at this product category, it's growing very rapidly. So consumption of time T is going to be higher than time T minus 1. So I guess my question is, you're saying that this is people learning about product quality, but why couldn't it just be the multitude of forces that are causing expansion of the plant-based category and not people learning on product quality based on ingredients and social?
Yeah, thank you for pointing out. So for now, the preliminary project is just a very basic model regression, and for the next step, we will cover the learning process and then you can know whether we are looking at purchase experience. Yeah, you're right. I think there are maybe some purchase habits or other factors that may affect the last period consumption and the correlation to next period consumption. Not only through learning process, right? Yeah, that's true. But for now, in this paper, we only capture this learning process, and maybe in next step we will consider more information, considering the inventory or the using habits. But in that part it will be a dynamic model, and in this paper now we use study for stack model, and we didn't. It's a little beyond our research scope for this paper, but thank you so much for this pointing out, and we will consider it. We will finish this basic explanation result, and this is still an ongoing idea stage. So thank you so much, and we will very quickly in consideration. We will finish this. And for the first question for the contract, because there are different things happen for each year. So we want to know if as the increase, as the time goes by, whether consumers have different preferences for these products. Because there are information and advertisement and promotion in the market, and there are some specific shock on demand for each year. So we want to control for that. With
I have kind of a similar question that also relates to the question of the time, both the periods, the size of the period, and what length of time you're looking at, because obviously there are more and more plant-based products being introduced. So it seems like the scale of options is expanding, right? So I'm curious if you thought about how much the increase in purchasing is just driven by the being more products available.
Technically, we use data set estimation. For example, here we have different choice sets for different countries, different markets. So for example, and then there might be food categories. So the here we have this choice set. And in another market, like for or maybe maybe more or less correct. So they will have.
Yeah, and the choice set is changing. I suppose that relates to why the utility contracts so.
I was wondering what's the outside option you considered from the model?
Yeah, the outside option can be other but include two sets. One is other but excluded I think because for example for the other that is good for the cake, maybe somebody maybe the cream is plant-based and we didn't do that part. We only include the most popular part because some categories may not have much consumers by that. And the other outside option is the traditional, conventional meat and cheese.
Okay, we're doing great in time. Thank you very much for the great discussion. And let's move to the next presentation from Stefan Hertz. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it very well.
No, it's perfect. So I try to manage that here because it like this it doesn't show up.
Let me help you.
It's right here, but that's also what I did now.
All right, and then we are here, right?
Now it's working. Yeah, there seems to be some technical issues.
Well, I would like to apologize for the virtual participants that weren't able to see the full presentation. As far as I'm aware, there will be recordings of the presentation, so I hope you will get the chance to see it all, and I'll try my best now to see if, please let us know if the second one also doesn't work, and I will call the technician.
All right, yeah, thanks a lot also for the help with the technical issues here. So in this presentation, I want to talk about product placement in the meat substitute sector based on what is called a spatial demand model. So it's a little bit similar to what you did. I also integrate something new into the demand model here. So it's also not moving here somehow. Okay, now it's working. So where did the motivation to do this kind of study come from? So there are the well-known problems of an overconsumption of red meat in many Western countries, which are also associated with the well-known environmental issues and also ethical and health concerns. And this has led to an immense increase in the share of meat substitutes introduced to the meat market. And there's an estimated growth from around 1% in 2019 to around 10% in 2029 of the market share of these products in the meat market. However, meat substitutes are still considered as a niche market, and also consumers are still pretty hesitant about meat substitutes and, for example, dislike the taste or the sensory characteristics and tend to perceive them to be more artificial than normal meat. And in that respect, the aim of this study here is to add to the understanding of the acceptance and also economic success of meat substitute products. And the literature in that respect has so far mainly investigated, for example, consumer acceptance or the intention to eat, or also the market potential of meat substitutes. However, so far, only very few studies have also investigated the positioning of meat substitutes on the market, for example, by focusing on naming strategies of such products. And for example, there's a recent study which clearly shows that meat-sounding labeling on such products positively influence the perception of plant-based alternatives. While on the other hand, the opposite holds for vegan labeling. That means if we have a plant-based product that has a clear association to being a plant-based product, this is more negatively perceived. And in that respect, there are pretty much two strategies for meat substitutes that I observed in the supermarket. And this is why I tried to do this study here. And I want to illustrate those two studies briefly here at the example of burger products, because this is what I focus here in this presentation on. So there's a strategy one, which are substitutes with a clear association to meat. You see here two examples, and this can be done, for example, through an animal picture on the package, or terms like butcher on the package, as you see here in the right-hand side example, or simply by the appearance of the product. As you see here, this really looks like meat, or at least tries to imitate meat in the best possible way. Then there's a second strategy, which are substitutes with a clear plant-based association. And also you see two examples here. So this works, for example, through the depiction of a vegetarian or vegan label on the package, or a clear visibility of plant-based ingredients, as you see here at the example of the broccoli burger, for example. So those are the two strategies that can be observed. And in that respect, or the research question arising from that is whether producers should try to resemble meat as much as possible. It means I put also here as an example a real meat product. And this would be the first strategy. Or is it better to market meat substitute products as plant-based products, which would be the second strategy here on the right-hand side? So we want to pretty much compare these two options. And as you have already seen, we investigate this at the example of burger patties, and we focus on the German meat market. And yeah, burger patties here are used as a category where consumers really recognize substitute alternatives as real substitutes for meat. And this is an important requirement here to do this kind of study here. All right, so from a methodological point of view, we use pretty much the same model that was used in the previous study, a random coefficient logit demand model, so that I don't have to say much about that. It's a simple utility function that you see here, where consumer I's indirect utility from consuming a product in period T is defined by this utility function. This is standard. P is price and X are the product characteristics. And what we have now added to the model here in a first very simple way are two dummy variables. And those are dummy variables for meat substitutes with a meat association. That means the first strategy that I have shown you. And the other dummy variable captures whether a product is a meat substitute with a plant-based association. That means the second strategy. That means these two dummy variables here, in a very simple way to get some first indication for the results here, reflect the impact of the two meat substitute strategies on utility here. To complete the model, alpha I and beta I are random coefficients that reflect individual taste parameters, and we can then simply, to get the market shares, aggregate the probabilities that consumers jointly select a specific product J in period T, so you cannot see the formula, unfortunately, here. But I don't know if it's that important. It's pretty standard in these kind of utility models here.
You know, I think probably they can survive without it, but let's not.
I mean, it's not that important. Okay, it's just a triple integral that shows it sums up the individual consumer choices to get the entire market share of the products. Oh, that's good. Although I know that you would easily understand it, but I mean, it doesn't matter. We don't need to focus on formulas here. And this demand model can then be estimated with GMM estimator by minimizing the differences between observed and estimated market shares. And then we also have to, of course, consider the endogeneity in prices, and the approach that we use here is also quite standard. We use exogenous cost drivers such as processing costs or labor and electricity costs, as well as their interactions with brand dummies. And we have also tried prices of products in other markets as instruments here. So this is quite standard and can, of course, also be debated and criticized. But we have done some tests and seems to be the best option that we can do. Then again, some formulas, but this is also pretty standard. We can also calculate then own and cross price elasticities, average values across consumers, using these formulas, and those are simply probability weighted averages that differ across products. And that means that this model here really allows for very flexible substitution patterns across products here. All right, but then actually, this was only a first step. The real thing that we want to do in this paper here is a spatial demand model, where the demand equation is based on a spatial autoregressive framework that you see here. And this framework considers the proximity of products in the attribute space. So how is that done? This is done via a so-called spatial weighting matrix, the W that you see here in the function. And this consists of proximity measures between pairs of meat products and the meat substitute products. That means the products in the two strategies that I have shown you. And the proximity between products here, which is measured as the inverse distance between meat products and substitutes, is calculated for now in a very simple way by using some characteristics of the products. That means some of them we have already seen, whether there's an animal picture on the package, whether the product is labeled with a meat name or something like butcher that reflects a clear association to meat, or on the other hand, whether vegetables are visible, or for example, if the product has a clear meat appearance. So this is for now the way that we do it. Of course, this is also debatable, and it's the core thing that we need to work on here, but this is just the first step. Then we can estimate this equation here together with a system of pricing and product location equations. We haven't put them here because I think the idea becomes clear by this equation here. And this can then also be estimated together as a system of equations using GMM. But the interesting thing about this model later in the results now is this coefficient in front of the weighting matrix, the lambda, because this is a spatial autoregressive parameter. And how do you have to interpret that? Maybe this is important. Can I move this, or I just try to tell it otherwise. So if this lambda will be positive, this will imply that consumers prefer products that are close to each other in the attribute space. That means this would imply that consumers would prefer this first strategy of meat substitutes, which clearly try to be similar to meat. On the other hand, if this lambda value would be negative, consumers would prefer product heterogeneity or differentiated products. So this is the important thing that we need to focus at the end, is lambda positive or negative, to see which strategies the consumers prefer. Then real quick, the data that we use here, we use weekly retail scanner data for the German meat market here from IRI for 2 years for now, 20 and 21 here. And for the first example here, we use Munich, which is a city in the south of Germany with a very high quality of life. And we simply use that for now as an exemplary market. It has a population of 1.5 million, so it's a pretty large city in Germany. What we have in this data is euro sales per week in this regional market. Then we have the price in euro per 100 gram. And we also considered here some indication on whether a product has an organic label for now. We have other labeling options, but for now we only included organic as the most important one here. Thanks a lot, perfect. What we also did then, and this was also the question that I asked you, to get further information on these products, because in the scanner data there is not much information about the product besides sales and price. We merged this data with what is called Mintel's Global New Product Database, which contains very, very detailed information on what is on the product package. And we use that information in order to put the products in the 3 categories that we have. That means meat, these meat substitutes that try to really be close to meat. And the third group, the second strategy that I have shown you, meat substitutes with a plant-based association. And we also use the information that we get from the Mintel database to derive this spatial weighting matrix, the W, which consists of the proximity measures of the individual products. Now this doesn't work anymore. Okay, never. Yeah, but that, I mean, that's normal. We're all not really used to technical stuff, even after 3 years, so we have to get along with that. I don't want to bother you with any descriptive statistics. Let's just real quick only look at the price of the 3 product groups. And as expected, what you see here, the price of those substitutes which clearly try to imitate meat is more expensive than meat products or substitute products with a vegetable association here. But this is pretty much as expected, I would say. All right, then let's come to the interesting part, the results here. So we first of all have the results of the first model, also very preliminary, only for this one market now. The demand equation that you see here. So as expected, price is negatively associated to utility, organic labeling positively related. This is as expected, but the interesting thing are now these 2 dummy variables. And what we have done here, we have used those products which have a vegetable association as the base group here, the omitted dummy variable category. And what we clearly see is that meat products and also those meat products that closely try to imitate meat are related to higher utility compared to the base group. That means these meat substitute products with a vegetarian association here. And then as a side note, we have also calculated some average own price elasticities for the 3 groups here. And what we see here is based on these own price elasticities that on average, meat demand is less sensitive to price changes compared to substitute demand here. All right, then let's look at finally at the second model here, the spatial demand model. Again, as expected, price has a negative impact, organic labeling a positive impact on utility. However, the very interesting thing I find in this model here is this estimated lambda coefficient. And if we remember how we have to interpret that, we see it's positive and significant. And this positive spatial lag parameter lambda hat now indicates that 2 burger patty products located close to each other in the attribute space have a reinforcing or complementary effect on consumer demand. So this confirms the result of the first model, so to say, that these meat substitute products which try to closely imitate meat are preferred here. So to summarize that, this implies that consumers preferring a certain product type are more likely to buy similar burger products than dissimilar ones. That means they are more likely to buy substitutes with a clear association to meat. All right, then let me real quick draw some conclusions and say what we might want to do in the next steps. So we have seen that substitutes which closely imitate meat are preferred to those with a vegetarian or vegan association. And the positive autoregressive coefficient clearly shows that meat and meat substitute products close to each other in the attribute space lead to reinforcing effects on consumer demand. And this is pretty much in line with a previous study from this year, who find that meat sounding naming on plant-based products has a positive impact on the perception of such products, while the opposite holds for vegan labeling. But the interesting thing, or the important thing, what these people also find in this study is that the more people in general prefer meat over vegan alternatives or vegetarian alternatives, the stronger this negative effect of vegan labeling on the acceptance of plant-based foods will be. And together with our result, this clearly indicates that particularly for the segment of regular meat consumers, producers should rather focus on such meat substitutes that clearly imitate meat. All right, finally, what are some next steps that we want to do? Of course, we want to extend the model a little bit. This was just trying around so far, but I think the result already shows a little bit. What we also want to do, of course, estimate the model for other markets to get a bigger picture of the German market in general. And we also want to use the cross and own price elasticities to uncover some possible substitution effects by, for example, simulating meat taxes and the impact on the demand of meat alternatives. Yeah. So thanks a lot. I hope it still was okay despite the technical stuff that happens here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I have a slide here, one page. New share. Yeah. So here I will discuss Professor Hirsch's paper. So since he already gives a very good summary for his paper, so I only focus on the interesting part that I think are very interesting to me. The first is he incorporating spatial autoregressive framework into the BLP model, random coefficient discrete model, and which provide insights for us, for me, for further research if I can also include it in my model. And the most important part, I think, is he distinguished divide the plant-based food into two categories, which are meat imitate and non-imitate, and already find some evidence that consumers have different preferences on these two categories, and also can provide some insights for future research on plant-based food. And I have two thoughts on this paper. First is about the similarity. Professor Hershey already provide a lot of factors that used to measure the proximity. And I have another source is about the package color, because when I go to the supermarket and I see the plant-based food package, most of them are green to indicate it is a healthier product than traditional one. And Professor Hershey also provides some products that imitate the traditional meat, and this package may be more red or similar color. So I think I was wondering if it can become another sources for the similarity of the product. And the second one, I was very curious why this similarity matters, why this similarity can affect consumers' preferences for these two products. So go a little bit further. It is an informed decision that consumers know exactly what they are buying, or they are misled by the looking by the package of the products. For example, they didn't know exactly what they buy the products, or they're misled. So the second question is about the plant-based meat labeling controversy. As far as I know, in the US, there are several states that have some laws or regulations that not allowed the producers to label like the words like a meat burger, patty, veg burger, something like that. And they must have some words like the meat-free, meatless, plant-based, some words that are signaling the customers about that there is no real meat in that. So for this paper, I was wondering if there is some similar policies in Germany, and maybe provide some insights on that. And I was curious how will these policies may have some implication for further research or affect your.
Thanks a lot. So maybe I'll start with the last point, which is very important. So I was lucky in Germany that we don't have such a regulation on meat substitutes. We have one on milk, plant-based milk. It's not allowed to be called milk, and there are lots of plant-based milk products which are simply called "this is not milk" or something on the package. Yeah, but for plant-based alternatives, we don't have any regulations yet. Maybe it's going to come. I didn't know how it was in the US, but I saw that, for example, in South Africa, it's forbidden to have any indication to meat on the package. Might also be the case soon in Germany. But nevertheless, we can still then focus on the other things like the one that you mentioned, which could be very important, the package color. But we still need to think on how to clearly put the proximity of products into a number at the end. And because there are so many characteristics of the products that can give an association to either one of the two strategies. And this is definitely something that we need to work on. But I was quite surprised that with this easy indicators, we already find such a very clear result at the end, where both models clearly showed the same thing. But nevertheless, thank you. So the package color is definitely something that I forgot, but it's obvious that these plant-based alternatives are more green than the other ones. It's true. Something easy that I didn't see.
Start from questions from the Zoom this time, if we have any. All right, thank you. I'm glad it works. Please type up your questions, and in the meantime, you can we can start addressing questions from the audience.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, it was a great presentation. I think just kind of suggestions, maybe you thought about it as kind of my extension for the next chapter, perhaps. But one thing that when you mentioned about spatial demand, as a consumer who actually purchase plant-based products on a weekly basis, one thing interesting thing on spatial demand is on the demand of the products where they are spatially located in the grocery store, right? So in the US at least, that when the Beyond Meat in some stores, they might place it among other real beef, right? Whereas
it's the same as in Germany.
Yeah. So as a consumer, we might find it interesting where I might be less likely to walk around and see a bunch of meat if the Beyond Burger is there, whereas if you have like one area where it's dedicated to plant-based products, that might increase the consumer preference or utility.
It's totally true, but I mean, I kept it here real simple. The assumption here is that you go to the supermarket, want to buy a burger, and then you decide, what do I want to have? Do I want to have meat, something that imitates or something that doesn't imitate? So the spatial allocation in the shelf is something, but this would probably be a different paper then. So I mean, of course, it's maybe unrealistic assumption, but this is the assumption that you have this choice set right next to you. Of course, it's not totally realistic to the real situation in the supermarket, maybe. Yeah, I think those guys were before you, Rigo.
Yeah, so I was going to ask exactly the same question actually, but on a similar note, I'm curious about how some of these, the length of time the product's been in the market and how that relates to what its packaging looks like, because in my recollection, it seems like products like Boca Burger have been around for a long time, and that's kind of one that is clearly more kind of look to it. But then Impossible and Beyond are newer products that are trying to imitate meat much more closely. And so I'm curious if there's, I don't know if that makes a difference whereas the likelihood is trying to imitate meat, but it would be interesting to have an idea of how much more likely something is to look like a meat product based on the market.
Yeah, I cannot tell you anything about that, but I can easily, so thank you for the recommendation. I can easily look it up in the data and check. It's a nice idea, and I can easily do that, because this might be, of course, a driver also of the results.
Yeah.
But we can easily check that. Thanks for the recommendation.
Let's accept one more question and then move on to the next presentation.
It's the magnitude of that. So, like, for the spatial model, I think the prices were, so they were negative for a bit. I think the value was 0.001, and then the other value for that was 0.89, and I don't really know what that means. Like, is that almost nothing, or is that actually, there's the statistical significance?
I don't think you can interpret these values. We really can compare these values in this case, because the models are somehow different. I was wondering the same thing, thinking, okay, well, hope nobody's seeing that, but I was wondering the same. I would have to look into how these values are really like interpreted in terms of a marginal effect. But I can easily check that if I look again at the formulas. But I was wondering the same thing. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Let's welcome Prakash there.
We can just stop sharing.
Okay.
And then
Start sharing.
do you see yours? It must be somewhere here. All right, great. I don't know where this is worse, but you can pick.
Screen. No. I think give me one moment. Let me open it. Yeah.
I think you're here. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are enjoying your time in Anaheim. Myself, Prakash Deb. I'm a PhD student on Auburn University. So next 15 minutes, I'm going to present our working paper on the determinants of plant-based meat alternative purchases in the United States. Animal agriculture derives worldwide criticism from environmental, animal welfare, and public health perspective. It is a major concern that around 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emission is produced from livestock production. And even in the United States, this sector is responsible for almost half of the total greenhouse gas emission from agricultural activities. United States is one of the heaviest beef consuming countries, although some consumers express their desire to reduce the consumption and try alternative protein options. The growing demand and the consumption of red and processed meat also exacerbate detrimental health outcomes, forcing many national and international food-based dietary guidelines to advise reduction of meat consumption. Keeping this in mind, plant-based meat alternatives are introduced in the market. The raw ingredients of plant-based meat alternatives are mostly soy, pea, and wheat protein. And the production process have advantages over the animal meat industry by generating lower greenhouse gas emission and minimum use of water and land. Also, the product is designed not only to replicate the taste and texture of the conventional meat, but also to avoid the detrimental health outcomes associated with higher cholesterol, saturated fat content, etc. There are some concerns regarding the plant-based meat to become a substitute of animal meat, as cultural identity is deeply bonded with conventional meat, nutritional loss during the ultra-processing of the product. Also, we are still unclear about the long-run health effects of the product, as it is relatively new in the market. Hence, majority of the consumers may be reluctant to shift from animal meat apart from testing the product once or twice. Also, if producers are promoting the product as ultra-processed food, then there may prevail some adverse health effect associated with obesity, cancer, type 2 diabetes, etc. A recent study on plant-based meat demand identified that consumers are considering the product as a substitute for chicken, turkey, and fish, but a complement for beef and pork. Although some of the consumers are skeptical regarding the product's taste, price, safety, and naturalness at the beginning, the uprising market demand shows a promising trajectory for plant-based meat to become a viable alternative for animal meat in long run. For instance, the market share in 2020-90 for plant-based meat was almost $939 million US, and it is estimated that in 2025 it will be $27.9 billion industry. However, the industry may face issues related to sustainable growth in near future, considering consumers are still unfamiliar with the processing nature and the nutritional aspects of the product. Several studies have been conducted so far in different countries focusing on the determinants of plant-based meat consumption, mostly using survey and group discussion data by creating a hypothetical market condition, which may not reflect the true consumer behavior. And also the results vary widely because of the questionnaire design and terminology. So in this study, we combine numerous socioeconomic and demographic characteristics of household level data covering the entire United States, which is divided into 52 markets. We are using retail level consumer purchase data that accurately represents the market demand. We are also using instrumental variable and control function approach to depict the price elasticity more accurately. So the study will help to implement suitable policy for the betterment of both consumers and plant-based meat industry. So our data set, we are collecting the data from Nelson Scanner panel data source, which contains 40,000 to 60,000 active participants households, covering 35 to 55,000 stores in United States. We compile plant-based meat price, quantity, household income, and other demographic variables during 2018 and 2019 of every single month. Of only newly participants households during the time period. One of the issues is we can see the unit price directly from the data set. That's why we calculate the unit price by dividing the total plant-based meat expenditure by total quantity purchased. We also implement a Fisher's price index to remove the effect of inflation. One of the issues may arise for price is the endogeneity problem, which we try to tackle with an instrumental variable. Here the price IV is the average unit price of all the counties within a state, excluding the county the household purchased from. So I'm from Auburn, Alabama. So if I'm purchasing plant-based meat from Auburn, this means the price index for my household is going to be averaging all the counties in Alabama, excluding Auburn. For control function approach, we are implementing two-stage residual inclusion approach. In the first is we are regressing price index with a price IV index and extracting the residuals. And then we put the residuals in the demand model so that the price endogeneity problem can be solved. So we'll get unbiased estimator of price. This is a busy descriptive slide, so I'm not going through all of those variables, just to let you know that household income range from 3 to 7, and the mean household income is 22.9, represent 70,000 income per year. And any household having more than 4 household members are considered a large family. Also, we can see majority of the households, 96% of the households are married, mostly are employed. They have less than equal high school education regardless of female, regardless of the gender. Also, 85% households are Caucasian. So the natural starting point of this kind of study, where the dependent variable has a limit, in our case is starting from 0 to whatever the household consume, the quantity consumption. So in this case, the natural starting point should be the Tobit model. However, The Tobit model is a kind of over-restrictive model because it considers only one type of observation. Hence, we are using two-stage budgeting decision known as double hurdle. In that case, the first hurdle is called the participation equation, which determines whether the household is participating in the market or not. If the household passes the first hurdle, then it goes to second hurdle, which is the consumption equation. It represents the household decision on quantity purchases based on their characteristics. So here the DI star is the latent variable. It's a first hurdle is a binary choice. DI star is a latent variable, and the special characteristics of the first hurdle is that each household has only one type of outcome. This means if DI is equal to 0, this means it's true 0, means the household never consume plant-based meat throughout the time period. The second hurdle is a bit like it's Tobit model. And YIT double star, first equation is the latent variable. And we are observing YIT, this is the consumption quantity. This is dependent on DI, means the first hurdle, and the second hurdle, DI star. This table represents the estimated parameters of the model. As you can see, the price, income, and household size doesn't have a significant effect in the participation equation. However, married household have positive significant effect. Also, educated, young, educated, employed female has a positive significant effect in the participation equation, and the Asian household has a negative significant effect. In the consumption equation, price has negative effect. This means if there is increase in price, there's a reduce in consumption. Educated, young, employed female has a positive significant effect in the consumption, but this estimates is only showing the directional flow of relationship, not the intensity. So that's why we are calculating the average marginal effect in 3 parameters. First one is the probability of consumption. The second one is the quantity consumption, conditioning that the household consume plant-based meat. And the third one is quantity of consumption in aggregate, in unconditional level. We see that 1% increase in price results a 1.93% probability decrease in consumption. Also, the quantity consumption in conditional and unconditional level both decreases with increase in price. Income doesn't have a significant effect. A small family has 0.83% higher probability of consuming plant-based meat, and if they consume more quantities compared to large households. Also, young, highly educated female has higher, not only has higher probability of consumption, but also consume more quantity compared to their counterparts. This means this result is reasonable, maybe because young, highly educated females are more health conscious than their counterparts. Also, Asian households has less probability of consumption, and African American has higher probability of consumption. Also, if they consume more quantities in both properties compared to the Caucasian households. Although plant-based meat is one of the fastest growing product compared to the conventional meat in United States, consumer acceptance of the product as a substitute of animal protein remains unsatisfactory. Consumers are willing to try the product once or twice. This may be like happening because they are still unfamiliar about the processing nature and nutritional aspects of the product. In that case, promotional activity, increasing promotional activity may derive the consumer demand. Also, we need more investment in this sector so that the product's quality, appearance, and flavor can improve, so that it can not only attract new consumers, but also provide incentives to continue the consumption. The lower demand for plant-based meat is associated with consumers, as I mentioned earlier, unfamiliarity of the product, cultural barriers, and as we find, higher price. A small increase in price results in a substantial decrease in plant-based meat purchases. The findings of this study will help play an essential role in implementing suitable policies for the betterment of both consumers and plant-based meat industry to become a mainstream product in near future, and attracting not only attracting meat reducers, flexitarians, but also traditional meat consumers, and become a substitute of animal meat. The product price need to be lower than its counterpart, at least for the beginning period. The product needs more promotional activity and increased quality, appearance, and flavor. Hence, it is necessary to invest more in research and development in the plant-based meat industry so that consumers can decide for themselves if the product can be a staple in their plate or not. These are my references. Thank you.
I have to say it was a very enjoyable reading your paper. I was very glad to see that we are quite close in the estimation method we use for elasticities, for estimating demand elasticities for plant-based products. And it is an important contribution both for our economic understanding of what are the substitution patterns between conventional products and plant-based products, but also for the literature itself, because then we can use these elasticities for other things, answering other questions. A few things I noticed that I believe can contribute to make your work even better are, first of all, that I don't think it's necessary to stop on estimating the elasticities and make your work just that. You can use these elasticities to estimate something else. You mentioned health outcomes, how health outcomes can change if we shift more towards plant-based markets. I think that would be a nice extension of your work. Also, your time window is relatively small. It's 1 year of purchase data, which I totally understand the limitations of even getting access to this data, but probably if you can increase it a little bit, it would help you to see if there is persistence, because that's an important thing we need to figure out for this market. Is there any persistence in purchases, or we just purchase it once, try it, and we never get it again? So probably you need a broader data window, especially because it so happened that the increase in demand for these products has happened the same time with COVID. And this was a completely unusual time for demand for food in general. So to be able to make some inferences about this specific market, I think we should move a little bit further than just 1 year. Other than that, it was a pleasure to discuss your paper, and we can move to general questions.
So you showed a paper that said by 2025, the estimated sales will be like $27 billion. That's about 27.4%. So do you think that's still achievable?
So, yeah, so this is based on another paper. So we are what I 100% certainty that 10% improvement. The product will be not sustainable will be the what they did. But I think it's
It's a big problem. Most of the all that would be only
I wanted to ask about your price ID. So you were using the average price across all the counties except for one, right? So do you think that's as valid for border counties or counties? For example, if we were thinking of Fourth County, prices in California, right? I'm curious if there's other approaches that you consider, something like propensity score matching or nearest neighbors sort of approaches that's instead of that. Yeah, I understand the reason. I'm mostly asking about whether you think it's
Let's take one more question.
I think we're thinking a lot of things. I have a similar question because I think it's a similar type of border economy. I thought about the external political might also just be disparity between economic sizes, but also maybe some urban areas, the economy that offer all that type of products, which also affect the variety of sources and food demand for it. So I think what I want to do. But thank you.
Great. Hello, everyone. For those that came later, my name is Tina Kochaku, and I'm a PhD student in UC Davis. The topic that I'm going to talk today is about demand for plant-based alternatives. It's still very, very early, and this is just, I would like to share the idea and my method, and then if you have any feedback, it's very welcome. What I mostly care is to see if that shift or that supposed shift towards plant-based alternatives has an effect or could have a positive effect on the environment. If we, in other words, move from a meat-heavy diet to a more plant-based diet, are we going to experience any benefits for the environment? This is the question. By plant-based alternatives, I focus only on products that mimic the taste, the look, and the texture of meat. We could consider vegetables, pulses, fruits as alternatives, but I don't estimate any of these demands for this project. So the main drivers of the consumption of these products are environmental concerns, protection of animal welfare, and health concerns. And so it's natural to ask, do we really protect the environment? Do we see any improvements in the environment by supporting the consumption of these products? I will contribute to the main numbers we saw today for the economic potential of this market, and it is quite promising despite the differences we saw. There is environmental potential and economic potential. It generates a lot of money, in other words, and it also, it has been found a 1/4 pound of plant-based meat to have much lower footprint, lower use of land, lower use of non-renewable energy resources, and also, I'm forgetting something. Water, you said? Yes, also, thank you. So also lower use of water. Before we continue to my idea, let's summarize what do we know about consumers that consume these products so far. We know that are highly educated, young people. There is evidence from both sides regarding the gender. Some studies find female consuming them more, some others find males consuming them more. And what's interesting about the literature is that there is a discrepancy between the stated intentions, the stated willingness to reduce meat consumption and the actual behavior. So yes, consumers agree that by consuming more products like this, we can have good outcomes for the environment or for our health. But do they finally consume them? That hasn't been found in the literature yet. What has been used as a prominent method is willingness to pay surveys and hypothetical experiments, which they cannot work that well in that setting, given that we are unfamiliar with the taste of these products. So we cannot really rely on just a hypothetical consumption statement. There are less studies, and if now more and more already from today, using actual data or doing actual experiments with sensory experiments. And the conclusion so far is that the willingness to pay for meat is still higher. And also that there is a complementary relationship between meat and plant-based products. Not necessarily, consumers don't necessarily see them as substitutes. So my goal with this study is to really understand and calculate precisely the substitution patterns between meat and plant-based alternatives, contribute to the picture about the sociodemographic characteristics, and see with what side of the studies that have been already made my data go with. And then also to see what's the effect of price, what's the effect of availability, of variety, self-placement, and so on. Then use these results, mostly the substitution patterns, and try to predict, try to estimate what's the change in the environmental factors we just discussed. What's the change in water, in land use, and so on for the production of these products. I use a set, two primary sets from IRI, which is an equivalent to Nielsen data for those that are more familiar with Nielsen. And they have two pillars. The first is household-based scanner data, where I get the choices of the household. And then I can, for a subset of these purchase choices, shopping trips, I can link them to sociodemographic information and some for health information for a smaller subset. And also I observe retail-based scanner data for each week of sales for different retailers, complemented with information about the retailers and about the products. And so by having that data set, I can observe the entire choice set that the consumer had at a given time and the consumer choice. So in essence, I'm using household shopping trips. I link them to demographic information, and I also get the product information for these products that the consumers purchased. So to estimate this demand model, I was looking for a model that deals with differentiated products, that accounts for heterogeneity between consumers, and allows for a discrete choice between different alternatives. My choice is to use a mixed logic model with a control function approach because it is easier to estimate compared to a BLP, for example. And you can retrieve the estimators, and also you still address the issue of price endogeneity. The main idea of the model is that the consumer derives utility, the household basically, because household is the unit of measurement for this study. The household derives utility from choosing alternative J, and we have two error components. One is the price correlation with unobserved product characteristics. To resolve this issue, as a first step, I regress price with observable price characteristics, and then I use the error as the pure price effect or as the proxy for the price, and I put it back in the model. Finally, my utility is affected by the price, 5 income groups, the attributes of the products, and the demographic characteristics. So I'm going to share some summary statistics that I have so far because the rest of the analysis hasn't been cleared yet. I have 139,000 households over 9 years from 2008 to 2020. And these are unique households, and almost half of them, I observe them for more than 1 year, for more than 5 years, in fact, which is good to the extent that you can observe when did these people start consuming these products? Do they still consume these products, and so on. I have kept only persistent consumers that were doing multiple shopping trips. So the consumers that are included in that sample are doing around 1.7 trips per week, or a total of 89 trips per year. Now, this table shows the percentages of households in my sample that purchase each meat category and plant-based and seafood. And you see that even though, yes, the plant-based category has started increasing, and in fact, in 2020, it's the highest that we see, 16%, this doesn't mean anything about the consumption in other categories, meat categories. In other words, we don't see any reduction, at least from the summary statistics, in the rest of the products. The age of male head and female head on average is around 49 years old, and the households are small in size. And I'm talking about the households that purchase plant-based products. So that's all I have so far. And I want to talk about some limitations of this work. The original data set I have includes many more households that haven't consistently reported their choices. So the subset that I'm using refers only to households that consistently reported shopping trips. And that has as an effect to have some groups that are misrepresented. Hispanic, Black households, young head households with lower than 35 years old are not represented exactly in the way that they're represented, for example, in the census. That's one limitation. And the second limitation of the data set is that when you extrapolate the expenditures to generalize about the entire US, again, the numbers are smaller compared to other sources of information like census. The next steps I'm on my way of doing it is to actually estimate my model and then calculate the environmental impact and expand this analysis to dairy. And that's all I have for today. Or your feedback is welcome. Deb, I will invite you to discuss the paper.
Thank you, Tina, for this wonderful presentation. I have nothing much to say, just that, you know, it's a wonderful presentation. Thank you for this. And so I really like because your use time frame, because it's capturing the consumption behavior from the beginning of the development of the product till 2019. It's a 9-year observation. That's really amazing. Also, you are using I think around 139,000 unique households. So it's quite large. So one question I have is like, if I'm not wrong, your households, like not all the households has consistent observation throughout the time period, like 9 years of observation, only 15% maybe. So if it's going to create any problem in the estimates during the process. So this is the only question I have.
To minimize this problem, I have tried to keep households that do what I consider, and you can object about it, kind of a rational number of shopping trips per week. So I haven't included anyone that does anything that's less than 6 shopping trips per year, meaning at least, you know, every 2 months. So in that sense, I have done my best to minimize any potential effect of people not shopping regularly. But other than that, that's the reality, right? We don't all shop every week or every other week. The thing is that finally, how much do we consume over the course of the year? So, and I don't think that it's a big problem after filtering. And I don't want to filter further than that, because let the data speak.
Okay, thank you. And another thing is the demographic characteristics you included as an explanatory variable. So can you please explain a little bit about which characteristics you included?
Income, age, household size, education, employment. You can also use, like, you know, the location of where they shop.
Exactly.
Somehow you know where they are located, if you can consider that as a part of where they are at. I'm on the top of my head, I don't recall something else that at least I have chosen to include.
Okay.
You mentioned something?
Yeah, I'm a bit curious because I also worked with the Nelson data. That's why I also compiled the demographic. No, not double check, just curious. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Please.
I have a quick question. I used Nelson data for this project, and I also use IR data for another of my project. So I have a question. I know IR data have some information from the category department of the project. But when I use the Nelson data, that is good. The products are distributed in a lot of categories. So the question is, when you collect the data, how you pull out of this method?
Well, that's the reason why you saw only summary statistics. It's a very, very long, tedious process to filter all these and make sure the data you use are the data that really represent the products you are categorizing them that they represent. So the method that I use is that I start from the general broader category that IRI gives me, I take this and then I say, all right, I'm going to keep anything that is related to meat, plant-based meat, meat alternatives, beef, ham, anything that as a keyword works for my purposes. And then I will use words from the description to make sure that if, let's say, the word beef is included, I categorize it as beef. But I will categorize a product as beef only if it includes purely beef. I don't deal with mixed products like that have mix of pork and beef or things like that. So this is a very long, tedious process, and you can filter only so much, and after that you go one by one. If that filter process with the part of the label or the description doesn't work, you have to read it on your own and assign it to a certain variable. That, yes, it is, but it is enjoyable. That's tricky, right? I also said it to Prakash that it is an issue because it just happened that the increase of these products happened at the same time with COVID. So I believe we only can do so much. In some sense, I'm luckier because I can observe patterns from way before the pandemic. And so I can see what's the difference and if the market was like really impacted compared to the other markets as well, right? Because if there is something weird about meat consumption or food consumption, it won't only affect the plant-based, it will affect the other categories. So yeah, I will the only thing I can think about is to compare my patterns compared to previous years and see what can I do. And then also wait to get more years. Pre-pandemic and after. That's a great suggestion. Thank you very much. All right, we are just on time. Yeah, please.
I just followed up two papers from my point of view. One is the one that Joe Coffey on the university that coming out early this year. That was a paper about losing the basic consumer scan data on Nelson. Nelson that are at the consumer kind of households. And the basically including venues and all that, look at the year 2014, the 19, create this into the plant-based meat purchasing index and also looking at and another feature that just came out last scientific report is coming from but also we use the AAEA just on the 2008 2020 so that determines
I must trash many papers coming out on that field.
There's no way it's right now. Every company says protein is how to create a long type of protein, which is never factors. And that's the only company that right now is small factory. And again, that's not science.
Great.
I think that's a great question. And that first one is possible. Maybe this is some of the coffee right now. So R&D is very and I think you mentioned about the carbon benefits that will be measured that benefits. I think one thing that would be interesting in differentiation. I mean, the company is basically based on T14, whereas the possible root source is also. Let's think about this thing. Traditionally, and that P14 2014.